The Street Profits say it's the tag team championships or bust. What is next for the Street Profits? We're going to talk about it today on Wrstlxtra.
Yo, this is Wrstlxtra. I'm your boy, A Dazzle, the Black Wrestling Advocate. Always joined by my trios team, the real House of Black, even with Aleister Black kind of anyway. Mex, the WrestleManiac, if you will, yeet. And of course, the main man, say his name, he will appear. It is the omnipresent man that is Gerard Bonner. The Street Profits look to face the Motor City Machine Guns for the WWE World Tag Team Championships on Smackdown this Friday. And Montez Ford and Angelo Dawkins were very vocal about their position, about their intentions on Friday. Gerard, just talk us through this whole thing. The Street Profits looking to be a little more devious, more aggressive for sure. Just talk us through that little promo that we saw backstage last week on SmackDown.
Yeah, it kind of feels like it's been a viral situation for the Street Profits, because this promo is the promo that a lot of people are talking about, and they kind of called it the elephant in the room. It's really a lot of what we've discussed on this show for months now when it comes to the Street Profits. And he alluded to the time in the Pride. He alluded to the fact that Bobby Lashley went on his own way. And he talked about how they're still trying to make people happy. They're still trying to put smiles on faces. And they've not been the title picture for 4 years. And it was as intense of a promo from Montez Ford as we've ever seen. And then he drops this line that says, it's the tag titles or bust. There is no plan B, which certainly seems like if they don't win the tag team titles, there may not be a Street Profits as we know it. And that's where things get interesting to me.
Mex, just share your thoughts on all of this, because obviously last week we kind of, talked briefly about this whole contract situation with Montez Ford, the possibility of him now having somewhere to go, where that probably wasn't really a thought maybe a year, 2 years ago. What message did that promo send to you?
Yeah, I would love for this to be a contract situation and play into the contract, but I think the truth of the matter is that he probably wouldn't be on TV if he was leaving. They wouldn't be firing him up and getting him ready for his next move. If he would probably have to disclose, if you haven't signed a contract by this date, you're not using you, we'll assume you're leaving, sort of thing. So that aside, I didn't actually see this as a split. Absolutely terrific promo by Montez, by the way. This is what we've been waiting for. I've always kind of referenced how the audience and the internet wrestling community have went from, Montez is brilliant, he's charismatic, to, yeah, he's funny and it's a bit goofy, until the point of why is he doing all this stuff? It's been a slow deterioration of people's tolerance of him, sort of thing. But this put him right back in the conversation the other day. And like I was saying, I don't see this as a Street Profits split. More so because I think when people were tweeting about it as well, I think Angelo Dawkins said something regarding it. And I believe Montez replied saying that whatever happens, we'll do it together. Of course, it could be a red herring. But I just saw this more as 100% they will lose to Motor City Machine Gun. I think that's a given. Now, it's the hell they're going to raise, or what is the hell they're going to raise when they lose. When whoever's shoulders are on the mat and 1, 2, 3 is counted, what happens from that moment forward. And even if they're together, I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it because now you've almost put something into the air. And am I right in thinking, was that on SmackDown or was the actual promo on SmackDown? Was it like a digital piece?
I believe it was
digital piece.
Yeah.
Right. So they put something that they would have probably considered throwaway because they've opted to do it there rather than on TV, and the whole world has grabbed onto it now. So it's almost like you now need to deliver on this promise. You know, so I think they've put themselves in a fantastic situation through a great promo performance there by Montez. They've put themselves right into the conversation, and you know, it's almost more intriguing for me personally. Let them lose, and let me see where they're gonna go with this. Because if they win, brilliant, they're tag team champions again. But then we have the whole, I guess, issue or conundrum of now we need to book them like champions.
Right.
For me, right now, this is more interesting. Let them lose and let's see what they can do.
I find it interesting because what we saw on SmackDown itself was obviously DIY winning their match, them claiming they won a chance at the tag team championships, and the three teams kind of, you know, going at it in the back. I kind of foresee now DIY being the reason why the Street Profits lose, and then we get a triple threat tag team match between the three teams. I think it's more going to be that, or we'll see something very similar, not so much the whole 7 series like we did with Carmelo and Andrade, but I think we'll see a very similar type of thing in terms of, you know, two contenders going after the championship, as we saw with the US title as well. One causing the other one to lose and blah, blah, blah. And then the triple threat happens. I think we're going to see a very, very similar thing. And I think that is one way of the Street Profits losing without it being necessarily detrimental, but then still being within the picture, having another chance at it and seeing what happens from there. Even in a triple threat, I would want them to lose as well. Again, it's this whole thing of seeing them in that space and how they get out of it, how they get over it, how they get through it, as opposed to them just becoming tag team champions. Because my fear is it's harder to then book them, as you said, Mex, you know, harder to book them as champions than it is to book them as chasing the championship, and having to go through that whole, you know, angle and character arc and all the rest of it in the chase. So as great as the promo was, as much as it, you know, raises some questions because of this whole thing with the contract and blah blah blah. My other scenario in my head was that, you know, even if they are leaving, could we not see something similar to what happened to Ricochet? Everyone knew he was leaving, but then he got beat down. So maybe DIY beat them down at some point, whether that be in the match, whether that be after, the following week, whatever it is. That's a possibility.
So they signed 5-year deals in 2019. Mm-hmm. That's fact. It's literally a matter of which month they did it as to when their contracts are going to expire at this point. Maybe they haven't, I can't remember any kind of major injuries with them, so there might be a month or so added on, if anything, but like it's all still in the air. There's nothing about him re-signing or them re-signing. I think, and I can't look past a massive factor of him staying is his wife. And we know him and his missus are very close, joined at the hip, if you like. However, men have left their wives for pastors new before. So
that sounded so bad.
Well, not leave them like that. Not leave them like that. But yeah, they have seeked employment in places other than where their wife works. So let's put it that
way. Right.
So yeah, it's one of them things
Less
where
than 10 minutes in. All right.
I said on my live stream yesterday, and there's no really polite way of putting it. If Montez Ford has the cojones, then this is his time to stand up, be counted, walk away, and you know, eventually, maybe 5 years from now, if he wishes to come back to WWE, he is, you know, I don't want to say Cody Rhodes, but he's in that sense, he walks into the main event, you know, if all goes well. But yeah, for me, I don't see this as a split or a split tease. This is more like, right, this is our direction from here on out. And maybe as part of their contractual stuff, signing a new contract, it's like, well, we're only going to sign if you guys have a solid plan and blah, blah, blah. So yeah, we go from there.
I think, you know, in pro wrestling, we've seen it so many times and it's mentioned so often, of pro wrestling kind of blurring the lines and kind of using certain things to their advantage and what's happening in the world and all the rest of it. And I think for me, you know, WWE are not dumb to the fact that the talk is happening in terms of, you know, Montez or Angelo's contracts and the possibility and the rumors and the blah, blah, blah. So maybe they're using that in order to get people's attention. You know what I mean? Kind of making us think, oh, are they leaving? Or if they lose, what happens? I think, you know, there's a bit of that in play for sure. But Gerard, here's a question. I think we asked this last week. I can't remember. But in your mind, what would be the best decision for specifically Montez Ford to do? Would it be to sign another contract or to go with the possibility or the strong possibility that there's a space for him in AEW in the Hurt Syndicate? Let's be very specific.
Yeah, I think the only reason he should go to AEW is to be part of the Hurt Syndicate. If that isn't a guarantee, take it off the table.
For sure.
Because if he goes by himself, I don't see him. I don't see them positioning him in the same conversation as a Swerve or in the same conversation as what they're doing with the Hurt Syndicate. So to me, that's the only way he should go. If they go collectively as a team, I don't see their tag team division. I mean, they could easily become tag team champions because they're skilled enough. I just don't know that in that environment that would work. So I think to me, if he's going to leave, it should only be because he's got a guaranteed spot in the Hurt Syndicate. Other than that, I would say check out your fortunes potentially as a single star finally in WWE because he doesn't know what that looks like yet. And so if it's going to be a singles run, that's the place to do it.
For sure, for sure. Moving on, but keeping with the whole Hurt Syndicate thing as well. We saw the Hurt Syndicate's first promo on AEW as a group, them coming out in the black and gold in their suits, looking sharp as ever. You know, had some very choice words to say. MVP was phenomenal on the mic. Bobby Lashley and Shelton looked amazing, ready to go. And then, of course, you know, we saw Swerve make an appearance, put the challenge out to Bobby Lashley. We're going to see Lashley versus Swerve at Full Gear. Nobody wasted any time in putting out the challenge, accepting the challenge. Let's see it happen. Before we get on to talking about the possibilities of what's going to happen with this match, we saw a very interesting promo. I can't remember. I believe this was another digital one and not on the show. I can't remember. But Lio Rush cut a little promo, said he's tired, fed up. He's won a few matches. He's on a streak, but he wants to be hotter than what he is. He wants to be bigger than what he is. He had a word with MVP, Shelton Benjamin, and of course, my man, Bobby Lashley, of course, and has put out and has called out Swerve. My question is this: 2 questions. Is Lio Rush joining the Hurt Syndicate? And is this match that he may have with Swerve a trap?
I don't think he's joining the Hurt Syndicate. This is him very much trying to lobby for a position in the Hurt Syndicate. And to be fair, I hope they play it into what is happening. There's a wider issue happening right now with Top Flight, where they're all at loggerheads, including the twin, the brothers. They're at each other's heads. So I hope this is almost like a, hey, what are you trying to go over there for sort of thing. and that kind of intensifies the issues that these guys are having. Of course, Lashley and Leo Rush are very good on screen together, sort of thing. I think Leo Rush was particularly very good in that act, but I don't think it is, you know, he would be a good fit, I reckon, but I just don't think on this occasion he is. If we're looking to like a fourth man, I'm not sure if he is the fourth man, sort of thing. I think more so he's, like I say, trying to do the lobbying and trying to look to impress them. He probably falls short to Swerve and then doesn't impress them at all. I really think that fourth position should belong to Ricochet, and what they're kind of showing us on TV, for me, kind of ticks those boxes. And yeah, I mean, that's my first choice. If not Montez Ford, then that's Ricochet is my choice.
It's clear, and I think it's quite obvious, that the Hurt Syndicate are looking for at least one more member. Could be more, but I think there's at least one more that needs to be, added to the group. We've got the potential of Leo Rush, who's kind of made it known that he's interested. Everyone else that the Hurt Syndicate have spoken to have not quite been so forthcoming in terms of their interest, probably pushed it off a little bit, Ricochet being one of them. Gerard, who do you see being that fourth person? Who do you think fits better as that fourth person?
This is interesting. Max Caster has been entertaining the thought, and as it looks as though we could be getting a breakup of the Acclaimed, please God, as it looks like we're getting some sort of breakup potentially. I think he is too full of himself to be a team player in the Hurt Syndicate, and they would have to put the beat down on him and almost haze him before he can be a part of the group. There's been some interesting scuttlebutt online, and the one that I like that not many people saw coming was Queen Aminata, who put a note out to MVP wanting to be part of the Hurt Syndicate, and he asked her on the socials, "Do you have a suit?" Let me very respectfully and politely say, Queen Aminata in a suit, whatever kind of suit she comes up with to be part of the Hurt Syndicate, is the move.
Of course.
That is the move. Throw away the CEO, throw away the MOTH, and give us the Queen. Queen Aminata. To me, she gains much more from this. It adds that female element. She has always been the one that's got next, but she never had the right group of people around her. This could really dig into that mean streak that she has and could give a new wrinkle to the Hurt Syndicate. Of course, when they were the Hurt Business, they didn't have a female component to that. But adding a Queen Aminata to that changes everything. It gives them an opportunity to really go after women's gold in AEW and allows them to fully dominate the company. So for me, the fourth person should be the Queen.
That is very, very interesting and probably fits better than anyone else I was thinking of. It's going to be interesting because I can see so many things going on with so many different people. As Mex was saying, with Leo Rush, it might be a thing he loses to Swerve, and then the Hurt Business Hurt Syndicate, are just like, no, you're not good enough. Ricochet, they're chasing after him. He decides doesn't want to. He becomes an enemy of them. He probably gets the beat down. What's interesting with the Acclaimed is you mentioned Max Caster probably being a bit too full of himself. What if then they say no to him, but it's Anthony Bowens that may join? I was thinking that's a possibility. That would be
awesome.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yes.
But then as well, Queen Aminata adding that female angle to it as well. As you said, going for female championship gold as well. coming after Mercedes at one, at some point for the TBS championship. She's faced her recently. So that, I think that is a strong possibility. Out of everyone, out of the four that we've mentioned, Rush, Ricochet, not even Caster, but Bowens is the third for me. And Aminata, I think Bowens would be extremely interesting. I don't think Rush or Ricochet necessarily need it. But then Aminata, I think she ticks a few more boxes, and a couple of boxes that I didn't even realize were there when it comes to that fourth person. So I'm just in general, I'm just loving the way that there are so many people who could be involved, and it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out, who becomes that fourth, possibly fifth person, and all of that as well. And on top of all of that, we've still got this match between Swerve and Lashley at Full Gear. Mex, how does this one play out? How does this play out?
Bobby Lashley has to win. that's I think straightforward. Like, I don't want to see any upsets, or we're giving the rub to the former AEW champion. Swerve knows how to do business, and we have to think of the wider picture here. These men need to come in and make a real impact. So for me, yeah, Bobby Lashley has to be successful on night one. If that's going to be his debut match, which is seemingly and makes sense from a marketing point of view, he should go over, sort of thing. Where Swerve goes from there, I don't know, because this will be, his record begins to look a bit in doubt, although he's obviously still Swerve, a former AEW champion and stuff like that. Everyone needs wins, but yeah, I think he has to start. Maybe that's where the doubt creeps in, and he considers their offer, genuinely for the first time, if Bobby beats him, sort of thing. I think it's going to be a very, very interesting match. This is someone, Lashley, that's, I guess, been the premier black act in WWE over the last few years. Two-time WWE champion going against now AEW's top black act, sort of thing. So it's a big deal. Both men, I'm happy that we're getting this kind of platform, this kind of massive story being told by the pair of them.
For sure. Could we still see Swerve as that fourth person? Not completely sure. Again, it's another interesting branch on this Hurt Syndicate tree to see how it all plays out. But another person that was once, that could possibly still be part of the conversation, but probably less so now. But we saw the return of Powerhouse Hobbs. We thought it was a foregone conclusion that Will Ospreay was going to be Ricochet's partner for that match. It turned out to be Powerhouse Hobbs. Gerard, what were your thoughts when you saw Hobbs come through the curtain, so to speak? What was your thoughts, and how did you see things as the match progressed and coming to the end of that match?
Well, my thought initially was we got the wrong Will. I mean, that was the problem. I certainly thought, I just knew it was going to be Ospreay.
Likewise.
But no, Ospreay got a lot taller, he got a lot thicker, and he got a lot meaner in the form of Powerhouse Hobbs. And so, yeah, we grabbed the wrong Will. But with that said, Hobbs looked great. To see him come back and be in the main event is really wonderful to see. To see him apart from groups, it's felt like he's had to be a part of a group since he's been there. So to see him somewhat stand on his own, be dominating, be powerful, and have a great showing, I thought was a really, really good look for him. And I hope that it keeps him around the main event picture in the coming weeks and things of that nature. It'll be interesting to see what he does now. I don't see him regularly as the, babyface kind of guy. This more so seemed like getting revenge against the Don Callis family. But after that, what's the next chapter in the book of Hobbs? That's the real question.
And that's a question I pose to you, Max. Like, where do you see this going? Because I'll be very honest. I struggle to see what happens with Hobbs after this. Like, even as an ally to Ricochet, as he's chasing Takeshita for his international championship. What does Hobbs do?
It's a difficult one because again, this is such a stacked show with so many roster members, even with 2 or 3 mid-card titles. It's like, well, he's done the TNT thing, and then that didn't really play out as best as it could have. But from that, there was something good, and it is that Book of Hobbs. So I think in the very kind of short-term period, he goes back to that Book of Hobbs gimmick. Don't join anyone else. Like, just leave it alone. Like, almost book him. I think you can take a lot from what we're seeing with Bronson Reed right now, who isn't winning matches, let's all remember, but Bronson Reed is looking impactful and making an impact with everything he does. And if we almost have it, but Will Hobbs is like this toned down version, more meticulous and sinister. Like, the Book of Hobbs is commanding every move he makes. So he might just go off TV for say 2 weeks, but then in the 3rd week we get a vignette. It's like the Book of Hobbs has said, like, you're next sort of thing. You're next sort of thing. And it's just like a kind of like a contract killer sort of thing that just comes out every now and again, causes mayhem, beats people up, or looks impactful doing it, even if he's going to take the loss at the end in terms of a match. I think for now, that's a good way to kind of just keep him active, keep him on people's minds whilst there's a lot of things happening. Like the Continental title with Okada is literally about to go and enter within the tournament again in the next few weeks. We've got the Continental Classic. The TNT title is with Jack Perry and Daniel Garcia. And then the international title right now is Takeshita, who probably still wants a bit of Okada. He's got some out of AEW stuff all organized already as well. So if they want to continue this Don Callis family thing, he could fight Takeshita for the belt, would probably lose. So that's why I think maybe just leave the belt thing alone for now and just kind of rebuild himself up in the meantime.
Yeah, for sure. We've seen in the past, Hobbs as part of Team Taz, Don Callis family. He was with what were they called again? With QT Marshall. That whole thing there.
Oh yeah.
Gerard, do you see Hobbs thriving on his own, or does he actually need to be part of a group? As much as it hasn't necessarily worked out, kind of it did in Team Taz. I think that worked, but does he need to be on his own, or does he need to be part of a group?
It's hard to say. I think we've seen him as part of a group for so long that it's almost hard to not see him as part of a group. I think the real challenge is going to be how he gets positioned, because clearly he has all the goods to stand on his own. You could make the argument that he could fill the slot that was supposed to be allotted for Wardlow, that big monster in the company that AEW still really doesn't have. I mean, they have Brian Cage, but Brian Cage doesn't appear to be the threat that he once was, so you need that big menacing monster that they don't have much of, so he can be one of one or maybe one of two. If that's the case, he could stand alone. If he's just mowing through competition, I mean, you don't have a Keith Lee anymore. I'm not sure where Keith Lee is, so whoever that slot is available. And I think he would fill that slot extremely well. And to be a standalone guy could make things very interesting in a lot of different turf wars that are happening in AEW right now.
The mention of Keith Lee just had my head spinning. Imagine if Keith Lee ended up being that fourth person in the heads. Anyway, wow. And especially if it came after or during Swerve versus Lashley as well. Interesting.
if this is, and I'm only entertaining it, if
that
it
would
like
make a lot of sense.
2018 Keith Lee, all right,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, let's get down to work. Let's get down to business. But if
Mhm.
it's not, then leave it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Alone.
I hear that. I hear that. I would hope, and in my head, I would hope that he's had time to recover, to freshen up, to rejuvenate, all the rest of it, and that's the guy that we'll get. But if it's not gonna be that guy, then no. Again, yeah. I agree with that. Like, I wouldn't want to see I don't know how to put it, but a lesser Keith Lee than what we saw in NXT, basically.
Yeah.
Speaking of NXT, let's move our attentions over to NXT. We saw NXT at the ECW Arena in Philadelphia, of course, which happened on Wednesday as opposed to not the usual day of Tuesday. Of course, with that Tuesday being election day, let's not talk about it. Wednesday happened, and wow, woo! There was a lot of things to talk about coming out of that episode of NXT. We saw Jada Parker get a great win over Lola Vice, of course, in that hardcore match. Great match that was. The Meta Girls kind of answered our questions as to what they do, after coming away from the whole tag team on the main roster. Straight, they're right involved with the main event and the 10-woman tag team championships, 10-woman tag team match. But the first thing I want to talk about is Trick Williams. What is the feeling when it comes to Trick Williams being pinned, and just basically how that whole match, as well as the ending, all felt? Mex, I'll come to you first. Trick Williams gets pinned, but yet still does whatever he does with Bubba Ray, Devon, puts Ethan Page through a table. But he was pinned by Ridge Holland. Ridge Holland pinned the NXT champion. What are your thoughts?
I might sound like I'm about to kind of contradict myself a bit, but one, I don't want to overreact because I'm sure this is merely just to motivate a match between Ridge Holland and Trick Williams. At the same time, I'm tired of hiding and pretending and stuff like that. I don't think I'm a believer of Trick Williams. At the same time, I think it's okay because obviously he's on a developmental brand. He's learning his craft and stuff like that. As a superstar, as a wrestler and stuff like that, as an entertainer within the NXT universe, he is brilliant. I love him in that aspect as just a TV character. That's what I'm looking for. As a TV character, I think he is great on NXT. It fits like a glove. But beyond the entrance and once everything starts, he's not my NXT champion. He's not my pick. And we've spoken about, the men's division is just in a place of it needs help. There's a lot of turnover. There's been a lot of turnover, and we need some more guys up in there. I just don't feel like they do this to anybody else. Like, and I just don't know how this even helps him. This is just a nothing tag match at the same time, but it's like, why did you pin the champion? Like, Bubba Ray Dudley was right there. Like, so it's not all Trick. Maybe some of the booking decisions around him as well, but like, consider this, if anything, it's tough love, which people often say that this is all I know. It's tough love. Like, I want him to become that better, be better, and he has everything that people say that this guy can be a WrestleMania main eventer. He can 100% be that guy one day, but every time he holds this title, or obviously on the 2 occasions now, I just haven't really believed it. And I'm trying to get on the bus, but this, for me, being pinned by Ridge Holland, I was just like,
And here's the thing: it's not to take anything away from Rich Holland. As I said last week, his whole story with Chase U, I think, has been brilliant. Has been done as perfect as it possibly probably could be. But I think from him to jump from that straight to the NXT champion is a reach in my eyes. It's not to say that he can't be there, but I just don't think it's kind of worked out properly, or has been worked out properly. But this whole thing of him pinning Trick, Gerard, before I say anything, actually, Gerard, what are your thoughts in terms of Trick being pinned by Ridge and then still kind of having this whole thing of putting Ethan through a table and having that thing with the Dudleys and whatsoever?
Well, it makes sense in terms of setting up Ridge Holland as the new #1 contender. So it does do that. But I think what we're looking at, and golly, I can't even believe I'm going to say this. This is a tale of two NXTs. You have on the men's side, Trick Williams, who I don't want to okay, I don't know how to say this. So here's the deal. I liken this title reign to the Kofi Kingston 2019 title reign in the sense of the difference there is I felt Kofi was able in the ring, but there were not enough quality challengers around him to allow him to have a great title reign. So it ended up being Dolph Ziggler for 3 months. You know what I mean? And he never got the kinds of match. He never got the kind of match that won him the championship. You know, that match against Brian Danielson. He never had a match his championship run that was like that. So you've got that. The other side of this that makes this difficult relative to Trick Williams is is Trick the modern day Ultimate Warrior? Is he the modern day Ultimate Warrior where we love his entrance? We love what he does, you know, in terms of charisma, right? We love all of that. That is what propelled the Ultimate Warrior to WrestleMania 6 and beating Hulk Hogan for the world title. But then after that, it was like, so we're going to get you and Rick Rude for 3 months. That doesn't hit the same, sir. So my concern right now is we don't have a strong enough men's division to give Trick a solid challenge, but then we also don't have a strong enough Trick to handle a stronger men's division. And it's crazy to me that this is happening all while you have Stephanie Vacour, Roxanne Perez, Julia, Zaria, Jordan Grace, the Meta Girls, Kalani Jordan. It's insane right now that this is all in the same brand. Think about this. Everybody lobbied for the fact that last week that 10-woman tag should have been the main event. It involved, obviously, your women's champions. But Trick Williams, that should not have been the main event. And thankfully they did that. But that says a lot about the NXT champion. And so I think there's an interesting challenge. And here's what's tough. There is no way to fast track Trick Williams right now. There is no way. He's only going to get there by better reps. But you can't, I mean, you got a Wes Lee who could do it, but do you sacrifice Wes Lee at the altar of Trick Williams? No. You know, I mean, it's bad enough Ethan Page got sacrificed. So a Ridge Holland, you go, well, it's Ridge Holland, right? Like he just beat Chase U. So, okay, yeah, that puts him in the NXT title picture. Not exactly. But when you're, oh my God, I can't even believe I'm going to say this. When your North American champion is a better in-ring producer than your NXT champion, and this goes from Obafemi to Tony D. And you know, Tony D, I don't like as a character, but in ring, he's really solid.
Yeah.
He's really solid. So
For
this
sure.
is a very challenging problem that NXT has, where you don't have enough men in that division to challenge him. But Trick wouldn't be ready for a stronger men's division right now. He wouldn't be. I mean, at this point, Dominic Mysterio could come down and become the NXT champion, and it would be entirely believable. It'd be entirely believable. You know, you could make the argument, you could bring back Braun, you could bring back Mello, you could bring back Andrade, you could the mid-card on Raw and SmackDown would completely trounce Trick Williams right now. All we have from Trick Williams, God, I can't believe I'm saying this publicly. All we have from Trick Williams is a great theme song, a great catch, great charisma. But in the ring, he doesn't measure up to any of the previous NXT champions. That's a hard thing to say. But I mean, from Seth Rollins to Big E to my God, Bo Dallas, right? He doesn't measure up. And that is a scary thing when you think about that.
And what's crazy to me in saying all of this, you know, we talk about like some of the legends and the icons of WWE in the past, your Stone Cold, your John Cena, your Rock, you know, even a Roman Reigns. You can argue, and people would definitely argue in terms of their technical ability when they're at the top of their game. What they do in the ring wasn't necessarily, you know, Daniel Bryan-esque or Kurt Angle or whatever else. It wasn't that. What got them through was their charisma and their ability to talk on the mic, and, you know, they're being believable characters that worked for them. And you would think that that should be a good formula for Trick, but it just isn't. There's something wrong with the in-ring enough to make us feel, as you've both said, something's just not working. Something's just not working. It's still, even with everything else, charisma, character, all the rest of it being on top, popularity being right on top. It doesn't mask the in-ring. It doesn't cover or you know, hide the in-ring. And unfortunately, the in-ring is just too visible. It's too visible.
This is what it is. Like I've because I'm not someone that like overly critiques someone's in ring, but like it's not that he's botching. He's not like doing moves and falling down or misstepping. He's not doing any of that. But yeah, there is something about what's happening in the ring that's just not connecting, sort of thing. And it's funny. Just before the CW launch, I posed this question on Wrestlings during Black History Month, so I got stick for this. But I said basically to what Gerard said, you know, is Trick Williams at the time where he won the NXT championship, is he the worst NXT champion of all time? And even if you look to Bron Breakker, who basically won it, a month after debuting on NXT right from the PC, Bron Breakker was brilliant. Like, now, granted, he comes from a wrestling family, but like, you know, it's harsh to put it like that, but he may be just like the worst of the entire lineage.
I mean, you know, let's start rattling names off, and as we rattle names off, let's see if we can find a better one. Karrion Kross, Keith Lee, Adam Cole, baby, right? Finn Balor, Shinsuke Nakamura, Samoa Joe.
Sami Zayn,
Kevin Owens. Like I find a name. Yeah, I can't find a name who was the NXT champion. I mean, Neville, aka Pac, right?
Yep.
Like, I mean, I cannot find a name who held the NXT championship that Trick Williams is better than as champion. And that's scary. And what's also scary is we're in a different era of wrestling. So if this were the 80s, Trick Williams would work.
Yeah, it'll be fine.
If this were
mid
90s, you know what I mean? Trick Williams would work.
Yeah.
But in this era where, you know, you think about it, at times they're going head to head with AEW. And granted, AEW goes, I think, a little over the top in terms of all the stuff that's happening in ring. But just look at the difference of the pace of that tag team match last week involving Trick Williams versus the main event. Those women went for it.
Worked.
And it was like, whoa, business has picked up. So I'm concerned for Trick. I didn't want to be the one to say this kind of thing, but you know, they've honestly protected Trick for the last 6 months with Ethan Page, and then getting him out of there and putting him in there with Pete Dunne. You know, but I mean, who on earth as an NXT champion was, for lack of a better term, worse than Trick Williams?
Wow. But it's the truth. Unfortunately, it's the truth. And what makes things worse, and we've mentioned it already, what makes things worse for him right now is like I think Mick said, is that there isn't anyone who can help make him feel like a better champion than he is. I think the best matches he's probably had, definitely this year. I can't think of any others, but definitely this year was the stuff with Pete Dunne.
And he wasn't champion.
Yeah, of course. But even that, I think that for me was more about, or became, should I say, about us seeing just how good Pete Dunne is.
And this is the thing, because if you check it like by age, there is not a lot between Trick Williams and Pete Dunne in terms of age. But we know Pete Dunne's been doing this for absolute years. Like he trains at this point. He coaches others. So like it doesn't surprise me when you pick out that that's his best match, because it's like having the best coach. Like, you know, you can't really go wrong, sort of thing. So I think that is it, that we've identified it. He needs that caliber of person to make the reign feel long, because otherwise we're just gonna feel like, right, he's holding this title, he's gonna face who's he got now? Ridge Holland, maybe for a month, a couple of months. He might face a what's that boy walking around with Sean Spears? I forget his name.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Completely.
Brooks Jensen.
That's
Brooks Jensen. He might face a Brooks Jensen. Maybe they give him a what's his name, a Briggs as well. But go on, John.
No, I was gonna say, those guys don't. When you think of the NXT Championship, you don't think of, no offense, you don't think of names like Ridge Holland. You don't think of names like Brooks Jensen. You don't think. So part of me also wonders, is this also a scenario where, since his best matches were when he was not the NXT champion, is the NXT championship too much of a weight for him to carry?
And I've always said, you know, early on, that I think he should have had a much longer run as the North American champion. I think that should have been his thing.
Oh yeah,
in a very similar way to how it worked out with Melo, where
wasn't it?
Like 3 days.
It was a weekend. Like 3 days. Yeah, three days. Yeah, literally 3 days.
It's 3 days. And you know, do a similar thing to what happened with Carmelo, to where you know, Carmelo felt like a bigger champion than the NXT champion at the time, even though Braun Breaker wasn't a bad champion. Braun Breaker was not a bad champion at the time. It was fine. But Melo was just a bigger character, a bigger deal, all the rest of it. It was a lot more believable. You're just more invested in him at the time. I think something like that should have really happened for Trick. I think his shot to the top was way too quick. Even in beating Dragunov, as much as we got to a point where we just knew it was going to happen. It's a foregone conclusion, but I still felt as though it was too early.
But that's the issue, because when Dragunov was it's time to go up now. It's time to be, moved to main roster. Who else is there? And it's like Trick. I don't want to say this sounds rude, but he won a popularity contest. It's like, let's put it on him.
Right.
Was he the right person at the time? No.
Right.
But the question is who was.
And it's fine. Yeah, exactly. And it's fine that the popularity can't, because that happens all the time. You know what I mean? We see it happen all the time, and we want to see that happen. People are clamoring for it, all the rest of it. That's why it happened. But I still think there should have been a decision in the back to say, all right, cool. We see that this is happening, but let's just hold off for a little bit. In the same way that they kind of did with LA Knight. Popular as ever. Even Jey Uso, very similar thing. Popular as ever. Came close so many times, but then whatever decision was made to say, okay, not just yet. But I think it's just very difficult to see Trick in that position. It not really working out. There not being anyone in NXT at the moment who feels like a viable contender or could even take his championship necessarily. You know what I mean? Maybe for me, we've mentioned his name already, but maybe a Pete Dunne would make sense for me. He's doing a lot on so many different shows. Give him the NXT championship. Just give it to him. You know what I mean? Help bring up others, help kind of, you know what I mean? In the same way, Ilya was kind of doing that, probably unintentionally, but Ilya was kind of doing that to where he was making everyone look better because of how good he is. And then it allowed us to feel as though Trick was possibly good enough to become champion. You know what I mean? It's a tough one. It's a very tough one. But moving away from Trick, and we're talking, Gerard, you mentioned all the ladies that are doing just phenomenal work. We say it every single week. We may even need to have an NXT women's section on this show, the amount of times we talk about them. But, we asked the question last week, what happens when the Meta Girls, are not involved on the main roster and not necessarily directly involved with the tag team championships? What do they do? Oh, we got our answer within days, literally the next day. You know what I mean? Of us asking the question. They were right in there with all the 10 women that were involved in this main event that felt like, this dream match of females of the modern era. You've got Roxanne Perez, NXT champion. You've got the North American Women's Champion, Fallon Henley, her girls. Returning Cora Jade. People have been waiting for her for a while, and she came back a few weeks ago. You've got all the new faces in Zarya, Julia, Stephanie Vaquer. I think she's like the greatest woman on the planet right now. And then the upcoming Kalani Jordan as well. And the Meta Girls were right in there. Let's not forget about talking about Kalani Jordan as well. But the Meta Girls are right in there. We can obviously see that there's going to be now a bit of a feud or something happening with those girls and Vaquer and Julia. Gerard, how important is it for them to be thrown right back in the way that they have, coming out of challenging for the WWE Women's Tag Team Championships?
I think it's huge. It's absolutely huge. I mean, think about who the Meta Girls have been in the ring with in the last 4 weeks. There's Piper Niven and Chelsea Green. There's Damage Control. There is the tag team champions on multiple occasions. There is this fatal 4-way in Saudi, and now two of the hot three, Julia and Stephanie Vacour. They have been with the upper echelon of women's wrestling in the last 4 weeks.
Right.
That says an awful lot about the Meta Girls. It really, really does. And did we think we'd be in a world where Lash Legend would be a hotter prospect than Trick Williams? Ooh, did we just mess with the family? I'm curious to see what's going to happen, but their positioning says plenty. Think about this. The Meta Girls get Stephanie Vacour and Julia, and I believe that's tonight. Trick Williams gets pinned by Ridge Holland. I rest my case.
Mex, what are your thoughts in terms of what this does for the Meta Girls, but also kind of on the other hand of it, they're facing Julia and Stephanie Vaquer. Julia has lost to Roxanne Perez already. Stephanie has pinned Roxanne Perez in a tag team match. And as I mentioned, she's looking phenomenal in every match that she's had. She's had 5 matches, 1 singles match, not lost yet. She looks like she should be, and I've seen it so many times online, she should be the next NXT Women's Champion. Does this whole Meta Girls thing get in the way of that, or is it just like a stepping stone to that?
It's a stepping stone. I mean, that's the good thing now about, that credit in the bank, ultimately, that Gerard just described, that they've built up. Now, Stephanie Vaquer and Julia need to topple these people that have been to main roster. They've been on PLEs.
Right.
They are probably the premier tag team in NXT right now. So this is like a bit of a hurdle for them to go over, although obviously we know there is a gulf in experience between the two teams and stuff like that. But hey, like, iron sharpens iron. There's only benefits for the Meta Girls stepping in the ring with ladies of that caliber. So as they have been doing, they've been taking every opportunity with 2 hands, sort of thing, and making the most of everything they've been given. I don't think they'll come away with the win tonight. I think this is to help Stephanie Vacour and Julia build up some more wins, but I'm sure there'll be a lot of learning and, at the very least, a great performance from them.
For sure. I mean, I could ask the question what happens next for them afterwards and whatnot, but I think it's safe to say that whether it be Lash in singles competition, or the girls kind of doing a lot more as a team over the next few weeks or months, I think it's safe to say that they're going to be in a very good position over the next few months. It's going to be interesting to see where it goes. Go for it.
I'll just mention, and this may lead us into something else we wanted to speak about today. Obviously, a new title for the women was brought out on SmackDown over the past week. And in a lot of circles, I live in like the internet wrestling community. I'm on X, I'm in Reddit groups and stuff like that. Surprisingly, and I will go down to the even the demographics that are saying this, a lot of our white counterparts are saying Lash Legend needs to be considered as the inaugural US champion.
Interesting.
For someone that bought the box in Lash Legend months ago, I'm very happy with my investment.
Trust me. Let's get onto that. It was introduced in vignette form. I don't know whether that's a good or bad thing, but in vignette form, that SmackDown are introducing the WWE Women's United States Championship. With everything going on, with all the ladies in NXT that we're talking about, with the plethora of women in just on SmackDown alone, who could possibly, be touted as the first Women's United States champion. Who can we see? Not just our own black females, but who can we see holding this championship or becoming the first or the inaugural Women's United States champion. Lash Legend's been mentioned. But before that name was mentioned, I think there's one that kind of we maybe we'll say is a strong possibility. But Gerard, who can you see winning this ring, or how many names can you pick out?
So interestingly enough, I shared a video yesterday with my top 5 picks for who I believe could be the inaugural US champion, and Lash Legend's name was definitely on that list. I also had Naomi on that list, which I think has been a popular one for obvious reasons. I mean, you're talking about a 2-time SmackDown champion, a former tag team champion, a TNA Knockouts champion. I mean, she's got the resume for it. You could also have a conversation about Mi Chin, who has been steady Eddie. She has done whatever has been asked of her in NXT, in Raw, on SmackDown. You know, she's had hardcore matches, she's had dumpster matches, like she's done all of those things. I think that could be a real win for her. One of the other names that I mentioned was Zoe Stark, who I think, you know, people were very high on Zoe Stark about a year or so ago. People forget that it was at last year's Survivor Series that Zoe Stark was fighting for the World Championship against a very hot Rhea Ripley. So, you know, I definitely think that there's a space for her. And I think there's an argument that could be made about Jordynne Grace at this point. You know, she's been flirting around with WWE for a while. I think it's a good move to introduce her to the main roster at this point. I think that'd be awesome. I'll mention one more name who has proven to do well with mid-card championships, and that would be Jade Cargill, who, quite frankly, as the inaugural TBS champion, made the TBS championship more important than the world championship over in AEW, to the point where even now the TBS championship held by Mercedes is more important than the world title held by Mariah May. So I think that's at least 6 names. And I think what's good about this is there are so many names that you could make a legitimate case for to become the US champion that it speaks to the true strength of the women's division in WWE.
For sure, for sure. Mix, are there any other names that you can think of who could possibly kind of be believable inaugural champions?
So there are some others that, and I thought about it more like, right, there's 2 heel champions right now in Liv Morgan and Nia Jax. So maybe you get a good baby face to be the US champion. And you want someone that's going to bring credibility to the belt immediately. Having said all that, I thought something like a Chelsea Green being an inaugural champion and being like typical Canadian that is the first to win the United States Championship could also be very fun. But I think Gerard's pretty much named a lot of the names I would have had. I actually conducted a poll on Saturday on my YouTube community tab, and let me see, I'll get this up. Yeah, so this is what people said. You can see 40 people voted, 57% have went with Naomi to be the inaugural champion. Bailey was mentioned there, Natalia, Io Sky as well, coming at both 10%. So I think a lot of us are on the same kind of wavelength that this is someone that is experienced in the company. We keep mentioning it. She went to TNA and came back, and it's like, what else? What are we doing with her here? Sort of thing. I think this could be a really good place for her. And then maybe use it to transition onto someone more so like a Chelsea Green or whoever those next people. Like if they went for Chelsea Green afterwards, which could be fun. And then you get a Mia Yim to beat Chelsea Green. Mia Yim and Chelsea Green have a long history dating back to TNA times, Impact times. So and she's very deserving. And there's a whole lineage of people that can kind of follow suit from there, sort of thing. But yeah, as the first that has to come in, has to establish it, I would say Naomi. But there are some other names which I guess are soon to be rumored in and around it. Charlotte Flair, Carmella, I've heard, Alexa Bliss. These are people that aren't even in the company right now that can come in and just kind of shake things up. Becky Lynch was mentioned as someone that is currently possibly renegotiating her return. With obviously the Netflix stuff coming up, I would imagine they would crown it before the new year. So yeah. There's a lot of names, but for me, Naomi is the number one. It's gotta be.
Yeah. I'd think the same thing. As much as there are so many who could stake claim for so many different reasons in so many different ways, whether they're great as upcomers like a Lash Legend, whether it be a nice surprise to a new establishment like a Jordan Grace. Mi Chin, who has kind of been putting the work in, and you don't necessarily see her as a world champion, but still feel as though she could be deserving of some type of championship that would work. Chelsea Green is an amazing contender as well for it on the fun level. Again, as you said, Mex, the fun part being her being a Canadian, just being a very popular, lovable character. Seeing her with gold just to, even more boost her ego and all the rest of it, I think would be really good. But I think aside from Naomi possibly surprising us and beating Nia Jax when she faces her for the championship, I think it has to be. I think it has to be that United States Championship. I think it has to be that Women's United States Championship for sure. The credentials are just crazy, and as we said when she first returned, we've been saying more or less every single week since. What is she come back for? And I think this would answer that question. I think this would answer that question. It would give her some credibility again in that respect. And if that run then goes well, if she has a decent run and defeats decent opponents and all the rest of it, maybe then we could see her as the full women's champion. In the coming months at some point next year. I think this would be maybe the best way to put her there. As much as she's been, to and fro with Nia Jax over the last few weeks, I don't see a change in that championship at all. I think Nia Jax right now is just a little bit too unbeatable. I almost feel as though the only way Nia Jax is losing that championship is if Tiffany Stratton cashes in or when Charlotte Flair returns.
So I thought, if they would have saved this match for a PLE, I would have thought it's happening. But my whole thing has been, you were going to get Naomi versus Nia Jax. Naomi wins and Tiffany cashes in immediately and takes it off Naomi. Possible. So I don't think that's happening because it's SmackDown. But if it was a PLE, I would. It could 100% it could. But I think it was a PLE. I would have put money on that is what's going to happen. But yeah, because it's SmackDown, I'm still just kind of watching. I don't think just yet.
You know what? I find it interesting. I think it was something that I saw on a clip from Wrestling's latest show. I think it was mentioned about certain things, or there's too many championship matches on the weekly shows. For me, I think that I love it. So to see something like that happen on SmackDown, as opposed to expecting it or waiting for it to happen on a PLE, I think it adds excitement to the weekly shows. I think that would be a great thing for them to do. Whether I actually want it to happen or not, I'm still in two minds. But if it happened, I'd be like, I love the fact that it's happened on SmackDown.
I kind of think they're saving Tiffany's cash in for one of two places. Saturday night main event in December or the debut on Netflix. I think one of those two places is where she's going to cash in.
Interesting. Do you think? Okay, so we saw what happened on Raw yesterday. All the ladies kind of getting involved in the tag team match. I would imagine that this is the setup for the women's War Games. match. Maybe too much going on, but could it be possible that Tiffany Stratton could cash in on that night?
It would be brilliant. But wouldn't, now this is the thing with the rules of war games, right? Wouldn't it mean that then once she cashes in, all of those 10 women are in a match for the belt? Like, how does it work?
If she did it during the match, then yes. But if it's after the match has ended, not at all.
Okay. Yeah, that's a shout.
It's possible. It's very different.
Yeah. Maybe if Nia got pinned or something, Nia was the one left down in the ring, and then everyone's leaving the ring and she just cashes it in. Yeah, possible.
Very possible indeed. Gosh, it leaves a lot to the imagination. But going back to the Women's US Championship, I think Naomi definitely seems like the best option. But I love the fact that there are so many options as well, all at the same time. One last thing to talk about really quickly, we're talking about championships. Moose. This sounds so weird to say, but it's TNA. It's the X Division Championship. But Moose is the new X Division champion. I kind of missed how we even got to Moose versus Mike Bailey. I don't completely know exactly how that happened, but it's happened, and Moose is now the new champion. Gerard, I mean, not to make it make sense, but make it make sense.
Well, the thing about X Division is it's always been about, no limits, right? It's not about weight limits. It's about no limits. And so at any point, anybody can cash in. Now, the problem with Mike Bailey doesn't know his own limitations. He doesn't. He just will make challenges and will accept challenges from anywhere. Now, we've not seen Moose around the world title picture for a while. He's not been around a championship. And so here he comes. He kind of falls into this on weekly television, and then he becomes the X Division champion. And what's wild is he now is saying he's going to make the X Division championship the most important championship in TNA. This has potential to be very interesting, much like when Samoa Joe was the X Division champion. He was kind of the unlikely one in terms of size, but he had a very dominant reign. So it'll be interesting to see what Moose does with this particular reign. Moose, the X Division champion. It is a wild headline, but this is where we are.
I think aside from the relatively new digital media championship, Moose has won every championship he could possibly have put his hands on in TNA. As you mentioned, we've seen guys who are the unlikely. We kind of have this vision of the X Division as being kind of cruiserweight and all that kind of stuff. But as you said, it's no limits. Right. We've seen Kurt Angle, Samoa Joe, a few other bigger guys as NXT champion, X Division champions. Mex, what do you think this does for the X Division? Because for me, over the last few months, Mike Bailey's held it. We saw Zachary Wentz held it for like 2 days. We've seen Mustafa Ali hold it for quite a while. We've seen Leo Rush hold it in the last year or so. Is it too much going on? And do you feel as though Moose could possibly kind of have a lengthy reign and kind of level things out a little bit with the X Division?
I don't see the benefit of this at all. I feel like this is a backward step. Probably been quite vocal, maybe too vocal before, about how I feel like Moose is conducting his career, if I should put it like that. Not a fan of it. And this just, again, for me, it's like this isn't a forward move. I don't know how you believe you're going to use this. And when I say you, I literally mean Moose. How are you, the person, going to move this title past the TNA World Championship? Like, what apart from being a former TNA World Champion, like what other credentials do you have to kind of really make this the in title? Because even if we look at your time as TNA champion, how many people cared? Like, how many people became super invested? You see what I mean? So I just feel, if anything, this probably takes away an opportunity more so from people that need it in and around that mid card, or younger talents trying to establish themselves. Unless you're trying to establish this again, more so like an open weight kind of division, like anyone can win it or something. I just don't see how this benefits their growth. And TNA, if that's one thing they're really good at, it's kind of pushing through young talents, giving the quote unquote people that aren't the ones that we look at as wrestlers opportunities and stuff like that. And I just don't feel like this move really benefits that at all. So I'm not a fan of it. I don't know how he can help the situation.
I think I'm in the same place. I mean, you know, more than quite a few people, I'm a fan of Moose, but at the same time, I'm just like, I don't understand why Mike Bailey would lose it. Maybe there's some other, you know, behind the scenes issues or something like that. I don't know. Whether that be his health, whether that be disagreements, I don't know. It could be any type of thing. You know, even with Zachary Wentz holding it for like, you know, 2 weeks, I think it was, that was, you know, puzzling as well. And there are so many other guys who's kind of, you know, challenged Mike Bailey, who have kind of been contenders in, you know, number one contender matches and all this kind of thing, like a Leon Slater, for example, you know, and other younger guys that are in TNA or trying to establish themselves, all that kind of stuff. Even going back to Trey Miguel, I know he's injured at the moment, but a Trey Miguel, you know, I'm just like, what does this do? Now, saying all of that, I think if I was to try and make any sense of it, it's just to have something for Moose to kind of reestablish him being, you know, the leader of this heel faction that's like, you know, the top heel faction in the company and whatnot. He needs some type of gold. They maybe think it's too early to take it off Ziggler. Joe Hendry's still around. Josh Alexander's still about. All this kind of stuff. But yeah, I don't see why he's the X Division champion. I'm hoping that it does play out in the way that I kind of, you know, want it to in terms of kind of leveling it out. He has a longer run because he is a bigger guy. Yes, it's not about weight division, weight classes and stuff, but X Division is X Division. It's what we expect at it. So with him being a bigger guy, his challenges are going to be probably smaller, all that kind of thing. But yeah, it's a tough one. It's a tough one. Don't know how to take it. Don't know how it's going to go. Don't think it was the best idea, but I'm still open to see what happens. Yeah, it's kind of one of those. It is what it is type of situations. I'm not necessarily disappointed, but not necessarily excited either. If that makes sense, it's kind of just, we're here. Let's see what happens. And I think it rules out now, not impossible, but I think it rules out now him kind of ever making an appearance on NXT. I don't see why an X Division champion Moose would turn up on NXT or the other way around. Possibly sending someone to TNA.
Yeah, maybe an open challenge. You send someone to TNA so he can beat.
Possibly.
But yeah.
It is just what it is.
I'm not enthused.
Yeah. I completely get that and understand. But this is where we are. But also where we are is at the end of the show. You have been watching Wrstlxtra on the WrestleManiac UK YouTube channel, of course. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See us every single Tuesday, 6 p.m. UK time. Work it out. In the US, it's too long for me. You can also make sure you like and subscribe. See when this guy Mex puts out all of his stuff, reactions to WWE, AEW, everything else in between, all of his exclusive content, interviews as well. You can also find Mex on the Wrestling's YouTube channel as well. there was this big intro because Mex came back. I thought that was amazing. That was amazing. So follow the Wrstlxtra guys on the Wrstlxtra YouTube channel as well to see their weekly show as well as their extra content as well. You can also find Mex on Gorilla Position every now and again as well. WWE GP on all socials. Make sure you follow Mex himself, WrestleManiac.uk on Instagram, WrestleManiac UK on X. Follow this man, Gerard Bonner. Don't need to follow him, just say his name. He will appear. But if you forget his name, all things Bonafide on all socials. You can also find him on his own show, The Faction Show, as well as WWT Live every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday as well. You can also find Gerard doing all of his broadcasting and whatever else all over the world, All Caribbean Wrestling, Southern Honor Wrestling, Nightmare Factory, Arche Wrestling, IWE, Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling. The list goes on and on and on and on. You can find me in one place. That is Black Wrestling Alliance on Instagram. Guys, until next time, we will see you again.